Welcome to Lab 4, Fuel Treatment Planning. In this lab, we are going to be updating land fire layers for the current conditions with the information that we gathered in the previous lab. Treatment Alternative 1 around roads, and Treatment Alternative 2 around urban interface. And then we'll be creating LCP or landscape files for each of the treatment alternatives for use in Land 5. So here is your mission. You've been working hard in your new job at the New Meadows Ranger District, and you've learned that there's a very active citizen group called the Payette Forest Coalition that's highly interested in the management activities taking place in the forest. In order to inform the public and other managers in the area, you've been asked to develop maps and show the expected fire behavior before and after several different treatment scenarios. This information will be used to increase citizen buy-in and funding for future projects. You will first need to update the land fire data so it's as close to as accurate as possible. Use the updated land fire data to reflect the expected changes on the landscape from a treatment alternative around roads and a treatment alternative around the wildland-urban interface. To get started, we need to set up our workspace. We're going to open our catalog and go to our Lesson 4 folder and create a folder for land fire and also an outputs folder. In the folder for land fire, we're going to be creating a geodatabase for our node treatment and our two treatment alternatives. Call the first one land fire corrected, land fire roads, and land fire WUI for wildland urban interface. If you notice that the names of these jump around a little bit, just continue on and they should correct themselves. If not, you can fix them again. Now we're going to be importing information into these geodatabases. So we'll right click on it and select import and raster datasets. We'll use this folder button and we'll navigate to our Lesson 3 folder where we saved our land fire data. It's not necessary for this project to download EVT or the FBFM 13, so we can skip those. Once you have all those added, you can select OK. Once that's been added, you can just confirm you have the right number of layers there. You should have 8. And then we'll move on to the next geodatabase. So again, right-clicking, you can do it from either the catalog tree or the contents tab. And select raster datasets. To save time, I am going to navigate to the Lesson 4 folder into the geodatabase that I just created. And I'm going to select all those files. We are going to be replacing these several of these files, but it's good to just have them all in each geodatabase to start with. And then the last one. Unlike features, which can be organized into feature classes and feature datasets, rasters can only be in the main directory. That's why we needed to create 3 different geodatabases. Once that's complete, we can close our catalog and open a blank ArcMap project. In this exercise, it's less about creating content in an ArcMap project and more about creating layers, so it's not totally required to save an ArcMap project. We will start by adding our layers, and we're just going to be working with the FBFM 40 layer for right now. So from this land fire corrected, we will select FBFM 40. I'll also take a second to edit my geoprocessing environments, workspaces, and I'm going to specify this as the outputs folder. So we'll need our FBFM 40 layer, and we'll also need DEM. And we're going to start with a combine. So we'll use my search bar here. Using the combine tool, I will select, you can either find it from a folder or a drop down, DEM and FBFM 40. And we'll label this combined layer DEM FBFM 40. We're going to be making 2 broad scale changes across this landscape, which is why it requires us to have a combined DEM and FBFM 40. The first change we'll make is going to be to change GS2, or moderate load dry climate grass shrub, to a GS1, or low load dry climate grass shrub, just to reflect the more moderate or lower intensity fire behavior that's been observed versus what's expected with a higher load like GS2. Then we'll be changing GR2, or low load dry climate grass, and SH2 to GR1, or short sparse dry climate grass. This change is only happening above elevations of 6,500 feet. It's been observed in this area that when fire does get into these higher elevations, it drops down quite a lot because of the lower amount of biomass that's produced in these upper elevations. We'll open the attributes of our new layer. And we're going to be adding a new field. So we need to make some edits to these values. So we'll select Add Field, call our field FBFM 40 corrected, and click OK. Now that we have this column created, we're going to be selecting out certain rows, which each represent a group of pixels. So we'll select by attributes, and we'll choose our new column, and we want to select out anything that equals 122, that GS2 fuel model. So all of these rows are selected, and you can see in the background that it's selected the pixels in the image. I'm going to right click and select Field Calculator, and I'm going to say that this corrected. I'm just going to type in, I'll type in 121. So this is going to say anything that's highlighted here needs to be replaced to 121. So we'll just move this over so you can see how this change happens. Notice all the highlighted ones are 122s, and select OK. And now all the highlighted ones are 121. So now we're going to perform our second change. So again, we're going to, well, let's clear our selection first, then we'll go to Select by Attribute. So we'll perform this selection over a couple different steps. The first one is to select DEMs that are greater than or equal to 1,981 meters. So we'll apply that selection. That selects a fair number of those cells. Now back to our Select by Attributes, we're going to create Select from Current Selection, and we'll choose FBFM 40 corrected in 102, 140, and 142, and select Apply. So this pulled out the fuel models that are 102 and 142 from the elevations that are higher. So I have 1,338 values. You'll have a slightly different number, but it should be roughly about that same amount. And just get a look at the distribution of values that I have there, so just confirming that they are all up in these upper elevations. Now using the field calculator, we are going to change all of these highlighted rows. We'll be changing those to fuel model 101. And just for fun, I'm going to just go to viewing the selection so we can see this change happen. All these fuel models change to 101. So our combined raster now has the correct information in this column, but it can't be used in our LCP file that we'll need for running fire behavior. First thing we need to do is very important, is to clear the selection. We want to have this whole column of information downloaded into a new raster, and just like we noticed with the processes before, it only gets applied to those selected values. Now we're going to use the lookup tool under Spatial Analyst, and our input raster is going to be our combined raster, and our value is going to be FBFM40 corrected. And we're going to label this, we're actually going to navigate this to our geodatabase for corrected, and we'll call it FBFM40 core. Can't be any more than 13 characters, so we'll shorten that there. Select OK. So now we have a new FBFM40 layer with all these crazy colors. But just to get a visual on how these fuel model distributions have changed, we're not going to go through the process of joining and relabeling things, but we are just going to look at these outputs. So I'm going to open the attributes table, and I'm going to create a graph. And again, using count, this is value, value. So we can see that we have a lot more 121s, these 121s. These 121s used to be 122s. So take a screen capture of this corrected histogram, and also take a screen capture of your original histogram. So go to my original FBFM40 layer, and you're going to want to select unique values, but instead of using these FBFM40 names, we're going to go to values so it's a little bit more comparable. The colors will be a little different, but that's okay. And then we will open the attributes table, create a graph with count and value, and copy and paste both of those histograms, or both of these graphs. Moving on to creating treatment alternatives. To begin, we're going to create a blank project. We're not going to save what we've been working on since we've just edited some layers. So we're going to start by adding our new FBFM40 layer along with our treatments polygon from Lab 3, in BBB data, and then some data that you'll download from BB Learn for structures and roads. We're going to start with a series of selections. So our dispersed treatments around roads, we have enough money in our budget to treat about 520 acres, but because these treatment units are located along heavily traveled and scenic roads, the manager would prefer treatments that are a little more spread out. Easy access will decrease the cost of these treatments, so you will choose polygons that are adjacent to roads that are asphalt or gravel. So that's our first selection that we'll be making. So I'm going to open up the roads layer and scroll over to the surface type column and sort. And we're going to be selecting all the roads that are asphalt, there's just one, or crushed gravel. And we'll be excluding all other roads. Close this. Now we will do a select by location. So our input feature is going to be our BBB treatments. So these are the things that we want to have selected from. And our selecting feature, we're going to be selecting treatments that are close to our BBB roads. They're intersecting them so that we have easy access. And we'll select OK. So now we have all of the polygons selected that are close to those roads. So now we will right-click on BBB treatments and we'll create a layer from selected features. So selection, create layer from selected features. And I'll zoom into this area and turn off our full treatments and our field model layer. So we don't have the time or the money to treat all of these units, so we're going to make our selection. We'll open the attributes table and scroll over to display C, and I'm going to sort this ascending, and we'll start to make our selection process for which polygons we'll choose. And we can see which polygons those are as we move the attributes table. We're going to keep all of the intermediate treatments and the pre-commercial thin treatments. So after you select the intermediate treatments, you're going to sort descending by acres, and you're going to select the polygons by their acre as designated in your lab, and you should end up with a group of selected polygons as shown here. Just to confirm you have the right polygon selected, you can right-click on acres and select statistics, and it should equal about 520 acres. So now you can right-click on treatments, and this time we want to make this selection permanent, so we're going to go to Export and export it to the Outputs folder and label it Roads Treatments and select OK. And yes, we want to add it. We can close this attributes table and turn this layer off, and we will clear our selection. So now we're going to be selecting polygons that are close to these structures. So I'll turn on my BBB treatments. We only have enough time and money to treat the areas that are next to one of these communities for this year, so we're going to select by location. I'm just going to highlight a box here, and that's going to select all of the points in that northern community. I don't need my polygon selected. I'm just going to clear that selection for now. And then go to the search box and select by location. Again, starting with the treatments, this time instead of intersecting, we want them to be within a distance of these structures. And it's only going to use the structures that are highlighted, and we want the polygons that are within 0.75 miles of those structures. And click OK. So we don't need to thin this out anymore since we have all the polygons that we want. You can confirm that by opening this up, and if we look at our acres here, we can see that in the selection we have about 530 acres there. So now I'm going to right click on treatments and export this selection. We'll call it WUI treatments. And yeah, we want to add it. Now we're going to be converting our new polygons to rasters so that we can use them to modify our raster values. So we're going to go to the conversion tools, and in order to modify these raster values we need these to be split out by treatments. So we are going to highlight, first we'll sort ascending, we'll select all of the intermediate treatments, and then we'll search for the conversion tool. And then we'll search for feature to raster. And our input feature will be roads. And we'll choose display C. And our output raster location is going to be in the roads geodatabase. We'll name this roads I for intermediate, and output cell size of 30, and click OK. So we'll check that we have created that. So just intermediate treatments. Now we'll go again to the attributes table, select the prescribed fire treatments, and change feature to raster. Input feature is roads treatments. Field display C. Output raster again to the roads geodatabase. And we'll call this roads RX. And cell size of 30. So now we have those two rasters. We'll do the same thing with WUI treatments. Sort. Select all our intermediate and our pre-commercial thin. And feature to raster. Input is WUI treatments. Unit display C, and this time we'll put it in the WUI geodatabase. We'll call it WUI intermediate, and save. Output cell size of 30. Okay, and now we'll highlight the rest of our RX treatments. Feature to raster. WUI treatments. Display C. Save it as WUI RX. Save. Output cell size of 30. So double check that what we wanted to have happened. We've got a layer for WUI RX, a layer for WUI intermediate. Now we're ready to move on to our next step. I'm going to remove my roads, structures, and polygons. So now we're going to be changing our fire behavior fuel model layers. So each treatment is going to have a distinct impact on the ground, and we'll apply that impact to a variety of different land fire layers. We're going to start with our fire behavior fuel model. So we'll add a fire behavior fuel model layer it's important that we add our corrected fuel model layer, FBFM40 corrected. And we're going to go to Tools, Modify Raster Values, and we'll start with the corrected value. And we're going to be doing this type of process several different times, so it's important to maintain a pattern. So we're always going to start with roads, and we're always going to start with intermediate. So on the intermediate fuel treatment, we're going to select Modify Raster Value, and we'll use our FBFM40 corrected. Now we're going to be doing a series of changes, similar changes, but a little bit different every time. So it's important to maintain a pattern of what you're doing. So we're always going to start with our intermediate change for both roads and for WUI. So the change that we'll apply first is for our intermediate, we want to change the fuel model 165 or TU5 to 161, and we add to list. And we're going to select that change to happen in the roads intermediate. And our target folder is going to be the outputs folder. And we'll name our file FBFM R for roads, I for intermediate. And if you want to save time later, you can copy and paste this path name. And select Create Raster. After each of these changes, it's important to go back and make sure that that change has taken place. So I'm going to drag my roads L above, use my Identify tool, and click on these areas that should have been changed. And I'll turn on all layers. So I see 93. So I'm clicking around until I found a pixel that's previously 165 and now it's 161. So that change has been implemented. So now I'm going to apply that same change to the WUI treatments. Changing to 161, and this time I'll select WUI intermediate. Target folder is the outputs folder. Now if you happen to copy and paste this path name from a document and you have an extra space at the end, that might give you an error message. So you can make sure there's no space there. And we'll call this FBFM 40 W and I for intermediate. And again, I'll drag this up, use my Identify tool, and click around and just make sure that change was made. And it was. 165 in the original, 161 in the new. So now we'll go to our prescribed fire, modify raster values. Our input's going to be FBFM40RL, so those changes we made before, and this one's going to have several different changes we make to the fuel models. So 165 to 161, 183 TL3 to 161, and then a 188 to 183. And our areas that we'll be changing are these roads RX. So we've already changed for the intermediate treatment, now we're changing for the RX area in the roads polygon, or the roads raster. And our output folder, where we'll save it, we'll call it roads, actually we'll call it FBFM 40 and roads. So these are it's the new layer that will be updated for the roads treatment, and select raster calculator. Create raster. So now we'll want to double check and make sure that the values that we are hoping to have changed were changed. So we've got our completed WUI and roads So we'll just select one of them for now and click around. I'll drag these polygons up here to the top so I can look at them a little better. So we want to confirm that in our roads FBFM 40 layer that we have all of our information adjusted. So here's a cell that changed from 188 to 183. Looks like that series of changes went through. And this is in our intermediate treatment, which didn't change. That's what we're looking for as well. And in our intermediate, 165 to 161, so that's good. We'll do that same check with our completed WUI. I'll turn on my WUI layers, so I know where those changes were supposed to have been made. And clicking around, I'm seeing a change from 183 to 161. Alright, so it looks like we're good. Now we have our two completed treatment changes, so we're going to be exporting these to our geodatabase so that we make sure that we know where they're at. So we will navigate to our WUI, and we'll call this, just add it for now, and label it the same thing. FBFM 40 WUI, save. We don't need to add it. And we'll also export our roads to the roads geodatabase. And save. So then if you have our catalog open, you can just make sure that those are there. You don't have to open it necessarily, but I'm just going to double check that those layers were created there. There they are. So I'm going to remove the modified results, and I'm going to remove FBFM 40, and now I'm going to add my next layer to be changed, which is going to be canopy base height, and it can be added from any of those folders. Doesn't matter that much. So again, we're going to go through the same process of modify raster values. The layer we're going to modify is the original layer, and we're going to start with the modifications for the intermediate treatment. And in the intermediate treatment, the manager expected the canopy base height to increase to 2.5 meters. So in the units that we are working with Landfire, it's meters times 10, so anything that is above 0, greater than 0, and less than 25 is going to be changed to 25. So we're going to increase the canopy base height from anything below 25 to 25. And we'll be doing this for the roads intermediate area. Remember, we're always going to stay in that same order. Target folder is the outputs folder. And we'll call this canopy base height RI. And just to make sure that this change has gone through, we'll go to properties, unique values, and create an attribute table. And to have comparable measurements in our reference, we'll go to properties and change the display to value as well. And then for these roads treatments, we should see a change in our canopy base height. Anything that's below that 25 level should be now 25. It looks like we made that change successfully. So we'll do that same change to our, so canopy base height is the input. Again, we'll be making it between 0 or greater than 0 and less than 25, since this is still an intermediate treatment. Add to the list. Oops, replace with 25. Add to the list, and we're going to be doing the WUI intermediate treatment. And outputs folder, and we'll label this canopy base height, W for WUI, I for intermediate. And now we're going to be applying our prescribed fire treatment to both of our areas. So we have input now is going to be canopy base height roads. It's going to be the input, and we're going to change again between 0, anything that's greater than 0 is going to change to 15, so that's 1.5 meters. And we'll be changing this for the area of the roads RX. This is the prescribed fire treatment in the roads. And outputs folder, we'll name it canopy base height roads. This is the final change to this layer for our canopy base height. And create raster. And then we'll do that same change to our WUI. So we'll use our input is canopy base height WL. Anything that's between 0 or greater than 0 and less than 15 is going to be replaced with 15 for only the area in the WUI RX. Saving to our outputs folder. Raster name is canopy base height in the WUI. So again, we can move things around so we can double check that these changes were made. Using our identify tool, let's check out our WUI areas first. Looks like we do see the change in the WUI to 15 feet or 25 feet for intermediate. And then for our roads areas, we see the same change. Now we're ready to export. We can right click on our new layers, canopy base height roads first. Save it to the roads geodatabase. We don't need to add it. And then canopy base height WUI. And again, just double checking in our catalog, I'll refresh. And in my roads, I now have FBFM roads and canopy base height roads. Those are going to be replacing the previous layers. So we're going to remove our modified results, remove canopy base height, and add canopy bulk density, which is our next feature to change. Same process, different numbers. Modify raster value. Our input's going to be canopy bulk density. This time we are going to be multiplying it by a factor. So anything that is greater than or equal to 0 is going to be multiplied by 0.8. We want to decrease the canopy bulk density by 20%, or we expect it to decrease by 20%, and so we'll multiply any value that exists there by 0.8. And we'll be modifying first our roads I, and we'll be saving this to the outputs folder, calling it canopy bulk density RI, and create raster. And before we do the others, again, we're just going to double check, make sure that that change took place. We'll use our identify tool. We'll need to create an attributes table. And we'll modify what's displayed for the original attributes table. clicking on these cells, we'll see that we have a 20% reduction in our canopy bulk density in those cells, so that's success. So we'll do that same process with original canopy bulk density, changing anything that is greater than 0, multiplying it by a factor of 0.8 for the WUI intermediate area, outputs folder, calling it canopy bulk density W and I. Create raster. Close. Now we're going to apply our prescribed fire treatment. So we'll go to Tools, Modify Raster, select our created canopy bulk density RI, and this time we're going to be changing it to anything greater than 0. It's going to be multiplying by 0.9. So we're only changing it by 10% for the prescribed fire treatment. And we'll be selecting Roads RX. We're going to change it in the Roads RX area. And target folder is Outputs. And we'll call this Canopy Bulk Density Roads, because this is our completed canopy bulk density layer. Now that we have our 2 layers, our roads is complete, we'll finish up our WUI. Selecting WI, anything greater than or equal to 0, multiply by 0.9 in the areas of the WUI RX, save to our outputs folder, and call it canopy bulk density WUI, and create raster. So, and take a moment to explore these values, making sure that those changes were made. Reorganize things. Move roads up here. So first check out your roads and then your WUI. Once you've confirmed that those changes were made properly, you can export your features to their geodatabases. So again, remove modified results, remove canopy bulk density, and now we'll be adding a canopy cover layer. Going to Tools, Modify Raster Values, selecting our original canopy cover layer, and for the canopy cover, we're going to be changing anything that is greater than 35 to 35. So anything that has a high cover percentage, we're going to decrease it to 35. And we're going to apply that change to the roads intermediate treatment. Save it to our outputs folder. Call it canopy cover RI, and create raster. Now we'll apply that same change. In fact, we can just leave this open for now. We can apply that same change except to our WUI intermediate treatments. And we'll change the name to W and create raster. So let's just double check that this change was made. Again, dragging treatments above, using the identify tool, and changing our properties to value. Areas that have a 65% cover are now 35 in intermediate, and also so we're seeing that same change, reduction canopy cover in the WUI. So successful change, we can continue on. Modifying raster value, This time we're selecting our canopy cover RI, and we'll be changing it anything that is less than, or anything that's greater than, this time 65 is going to be changed to 65. So anything greater than 65 will be changed to 65. So we'll reduce our canopy cover in just the upper levels. And we'll do this for the roads RX area, and save to the outputs folder. And we'll call this canopy cover roads and create raster. And then we will change this layer to the input layer to the WL, and the selected pixels to the WUI RX, and keep the same change and apply this to, name it canopy cover WUI, and create raster. So we can click around again and just make sure that those canopy covers are what we expect them to be, and they look good. So we will export our roads to the roads geodatabase and export WUI. So now let's go to Arc Catalog and do a little bit of cleanup. So first I'm going to right click here and refresh. So now we have new canopy base, canopy bulk densities, canopy base heights, canopy cover, fiber fuel model, which means we no longer need the old ones. So we're going to delete canopy bulk density, base height, canopy cover, and FBFM 40. We'll do that for roads and for WUI, just deleting the original. We'll also adjust, make sure our corrected, and we'll delete the original FBFM 40 in our corrected one. Good. Now go back to our ARC project, and I'm just going to start a new ARC project, blank map. Don't need to save. And I'm going to add data from each of these geodatabases, and I'm going to create an LCP file. So using the ArcFuels toolbar again, I'm going to select Build LCP using raster data, and it doesn't quite know which fuel model to use since the name is a little bit different, so I'll select FBFM 40 corrected. For my output, I'm going to choose that I want it to be saved in my Landfire corrected geodatabase, and we'll call it BBB corrected, BBB core, and select Build LCP. Once that's completed, you can close, and I'm going to remove all these layers, and now I'll add all the layers from the roads. I don't need roads L and roads RX. Add these, and again build LCP using raster data. Because these names are a little off normal, they're not going to know auto-populate, but we can fill that in. Canopy base height, canopy bulk density, and output is into the roads geodatabase. We'll call it BBB roads, build LCP. And then finally we will delete this again and add the layers from the WUI geodatabase. And we don't need these two. Build LCP using raster data, fuel model, canopy cover, canopy base height, and canopy bulk density. Output into the WUI geodatabase, and we'll call it BBB WUI. Build LCP. So for your quiz, you're going to be expanding these file structures. Well, refreshing first. Right-click, refresh, and expand these geodatabases so that you can make sure that you have all the layers that you need. Looks like the LCP files are not showing up. That's just fine. So we can make sure that you have all the pieces, and you'll need those LCP files for Lab 5.